But he was too funny. He said, man, you can't shove that dog.
That makes sense.
I said, well, I never thought of it. Yeah, every time he got in the car before, he
One-way trip, baby.
because they learn fast. Yeah, he's funny. He's just kind of like, he took him down the road to where the property stops. You walking in there and make a turn around and put your so he'll go that far and turn around.
Does he still stay out at night?
Yeah, and he don't want to be in the house. He said to me, now, Lucky picked Lucky up tonight because he had to go to a concert and stuff. It's all right. So he's going to pick him up tonight because we're leaving in the morning to go to North Carolina.
Our kids are small. It's like 10 minutes.
But Lucky goes there and stays in the house. Got Mike upset the apple cart. I don't know. Him and Dexter kind of had their little rounds. Dexter, yeah, he wanted to hurt him. Yeah, he's a bird dog. So Lucky's like jumps around.
You said HOAs, I think those are the 3 things.
Oh, I got
He never had anybody turn around and like,
But there's, and just like,
you ain't heard me no more. I was here before you were. I told him, I said, Nick, you're
when I do it,
Lucky might teach you to leave.
right in the store down
You put a radio call.
my house and Tuesday was right between both and Wednesday. I was like, that was very good.
Right.
You know, so he's gone. And he might teach you a bad habit. Which you don't have now.
You spending the night, the 2 hours at night?
Yeah, Lucky.
Or you want to come back after the concert?
No, like, he picks him up after the concert, take him around.
20 years old.
I won't be gone until Sunday.
But Lucky stays in the house.
Pretty much.
The other dog doesn't.
No, he said he brings him in the house. He stays about 2 or 3 minutes. I said, well, you know, that's not bad. He's probably been outside all the time. Right. Other than when you see the pictures of Rescue Me, he was inside somebody's house. Like he was a house dog. Oh, he's housebroken. Yeah, he broke him not to come in the house. All right. Mr. Pope, the man of the hour.
Good evening.
Or half
Welcome
hour.
back for our next STR discussion. Tonight we're going to talk about post-sale and post-inheritance licenses for properties with STR licenses or without STR licenses. Yes, if you want to just go to the cover sheet and slide. So just, I'm not going to go through these, but just this is the running list of topics that we're addressing. The green topics, well, we've kind of sort of got a consensus on. The previously yellow, now orange ones we had some discussion on. We have some ideas which we'll be bringing back in the future for further refinement. And the red are TBD. The red are the ones we are working through. The next 2 on the list are allowing either purchasers of properties or folks who have inherited properties to get ISTR licenses. And I will say, just from the top, this particular topic is more vague than the last few things we've been working on. The last few things we've been working on have been pretty hyper-specific with kind of much more clear-cut recommendations, clear-cut data. These are starting to broaden the discussion into more philosophical issues. So it's just a different kind of discussion tonight than it has been. And so for those of you who have seen the packet, it's online. You're about to see it again, but there's not a lot of slides here. It's going to be a lot of conversation, but there's not necessarily a lot of slides. So let's get started. So I'm trying to boil down the volume of public comment, staff comment, council comment, studies, everything that's been discussed about these issues. We're kind of looking at a choice between giving folks the ability to sell or inherit properties with licenses to allow the preserve the value of that use. A property that's used as a short-term rental is more valuable than a property that is not used as a short-term rental. Allowing the next owner of that property, however they come into it, to continue to rent that home on a short-term rental basis increases the value, it preserves the value. It allows generational ownership. That's kind of what it boils down to. Should license holders or folks who hadn't gotten a license before this started be able to capitalize on that increased value, give the next owner something to maintain a chain of generational ownership, or outside the family, just a new person comes in and buys the revenue. And so the seller gets that premium. Or looked at it the other way, allowing the folks who already had licenses to sell those licenses increases their property. It gives them preferential treatment over those folks who didn't have a license when all this started. And it also lengthens the amount of time for any new person to get a license if we continue the existing license forward into perpetuity. So those are kind of the very broad pros and cons. We could debate those all night, but I just tried to distill it to the simplest statements possible. Pros and cons of selling and inheriting licenses. Go ahead, Les. Thank you. So to kind of review tonight, we're going to go over what the short-term rental committee recommended, the recommendations that were in the mayor's ordinance that he presented in 2022, and the current ordinance. And I do want to also, another disclaimer for this whole conversation is that the short-term rental committee was operating under different assumptions than we are now. When the short-term rental committee had their discussions, they discussed STR licenses, not ISTR licenses, not OSTR licenses. They discussed ISTR licenses. A cap had not been put in place. They recommended a cap as an option, but a cap had not been put in place when they were discussing these things. So everything that the committee said is subject these days to a little retroactive interpretation. So to try to mitigate that as much as possible, I presented my summary that I'm about to go through with you guys. I emailed it to all the members of the STR committee and said, hey, can you confirm that I'm not about to misquote your intent when you were working on this, because you were working under different circumstances than we are now. So I believe that our discussion tonight accurately represents the intent of the short-term rental committee translated into the scheme of ISTR and OSTR licenses. So when they were working, the STR committee recommended that we preserve the right of existing rental uses. That's rental uses that were existing at the time they were working, and that any short-term rentals that came along after the date of the ordinance, which referred to a future regulation, would have the right to sell the property to new owners who will be able to obtain licenses. And they further recommended that anyone who owned a 4% property that did not have a license when the future ordinance passed would be able to sell that home and the first purchaser get a license as long as they did it in a timely manner. So how that translates into how we're operating now is that the first purchaser of any property, of any licensed property on Folly Beach be able to get an ISTR license. If you had a license on the day the cap passed and you want to sell your property, you could market it and sell it with an ISTR license. The new owner could get one, but that new owner came into the new regulatory scheme and understood that that license ran only with his tenure of ownership at the property. Interestingly, when you compare these two and put them together, if you were an unlicensed 4% property, the STR committee recommended that you have a right to sell it and the new person get a license within 30 days. But if you were an unlicensed 6% owner, they did not recommend that right. So STR committee recommended licenses in place at the time of the ordinance. The property could be sold. The first person who bought it was able to get a license, but they knew going forward they wouldn't get a license. If you were a 6% person who had not gotten a license, you didn't get that. You did not get that allowance.
So if you are a 4% owner, but that's not how it is now, but this is what
This is just what they recommended.
it might go this way. So if you're a 4% owner and you sell your home, that the purchaser can get an ISTR as long as they apply within 30 days?
Right. That was the recommendation of the committee.
Okay.
And the goal there was to preserve the rights of residents at the time to sell their property with the added value of a license, but that the new owner knew that was it. They could not do that.
So we may be voting on this next month.
At some point, you will vote on a version of this, maybe not that language or anything remote to it. Right now, we're just reviewing what was previously recommended, so you guys
Okay.
can argue the pros and cons. So that was the STR committee recommendation for purchase. For purchase, the mayor's ordinance recommended that the first purchaser of a property that was 4% when the ordinance passed and had stayed 4% until it was sold, that person can get an ISTR. The next purchaser could get an ISTR. So the mayor's recommendation kind of matches with the second part of the STR committee's recommendation that 4% owners, at the time the ordinance passed, they could sell their property, and if the new owner was not a resident, didn't claim it as their primary residence, they could get what we now call an ISTR. And there was no allowance for any 6% property to be sold and get a new license under the ordinance in 2022. So what do we do with that? What do we do with that information? We've heard the pros and cons, we've debated it. First, I looked around at other SC South Carolina towns that have caps. Kiowa, Beaufort, Mount Pleasant, Rock Hill all limit licenses, and there is no rule that applies to all caps in South Carolina, much less nationally or regionally. In Kiowa, if you're a family member and you buy or inherit the property, you can get a license. If you are not a family member and you buy the property, you cannot get a license. In Beaufort, anyone, the next owner can get a license, whether they're a purchaser, inheritor, family member. Beaufort allows licenses not to be transferred, but for new owners to get licenses. Mount Pleasant allows both, and Rock Hill allows both. So that's what other towns do. So what could we do? One, we could leave this as it is.
Wait a minute.
Rock Hill.
Rock Hill says everybody
I'm
falls
sorry,
under the
yeah,
cap.
Thank you, yes, thank you. Yeah, no allowance in Rock Hill. Thank you, sorry.
Okay.
So, what would the city council like to do? We can leave it as is, as written, as adopted in the referendum. No new owner automatically qualifies for an ISTR. If you'd like an ISTR, you get in line, and when your time comes, your time comes. And then the next two are basically saying we could take some combination of the recommendations. We let the licenses transfer once, we let them transfer in perpetuity, kind of locking them in forever, or we let them go one time, which says to the next owner, hey, you get a license, but you understand when you buy it that the next person doesn't. All these folks who were caught has connotations, but all these folks who were affected as property owners where previously STRs hadn't been regulated, we say to them, okay, fine, you can sell your property and the next person can get a license. We won't penalize you for owning the property when this happened, but going forward, all the new people who come in know the rules, they know the deal when they buy your property, and they won't get a license. We've called for new ideas, and one idea that's been put forward is creating a limited license as a bridge to an ISTR, which right now, if you own a 6% property and you have an ISTR, or you don't have an ISTR, and if you own a 4% property and a 6% person buys it, those folks have two options: get on the wait list or nothing. This would be kind of a third option for those folks. We'll put you on the wait list, but instead of telling you you get no rentals, we give you a limited amount of rentals for carrying costs, folks who want to retire here, people who want to plan for later. So that would be a different option that we could do.
Okay, so they don't have to be a 4%. The new purchaser, the new property owner can rent it limited
Right, yes, sir.
as a 6% owner, the new owner.
If you went that way, that's what would happen. We'd say, hello, new owner, you're a 6% property, you can't get an ISTR.
When are we gonna,
But before let's discuss this too much, let's get to the next step and let's actually bring that up so
Okay.
we're all looking at the same thing
Okay.
before we ask too many questions about it, if the council wants to do that. I mean, I'm interested in what the bridge idea is, but we need the bridge idea to look at, to talk about it.
But ultimately, all these ideas are gonna be streamlined into one voting ordinance by January.
No,
Well, by February,
By
is our
February.
goal. So the results of the last 2 meetings and the results of probably the next 3 meetings will be compiled together and presented back to you guys as a package for review and vote.
Okay,
so that kind of puts this discussion on hold till next week, if you can get that together.
That's funny, I was gonna say the exact same thing, because we've all discussed it a little bit, and it's worthy of a conversation, but it could knock a lot of these other ones out. Yeah.
Is there any interest in pursuing any of the other ones
You can
further?
talk about the rest of it, but I'm just saying, before we get into the bridge discussion idea, we need to have that package in front of us.
All right. All right, Wes, you wanna go to the next one? So that was purchase, that's one way ownership changes. Another way ownership changes is through inheritance. The STR committee did not directly address transfers through inheritance. There's an asterisk by that, because again, I had to reach out to the members of the committee to ask them, could you please tell me in your own words if you agree with this? They did not directly address it. Some of them believe they addressed it through the same rules as purchase. Some of them believe that they did not intend for heirs to get licenses. It was only through purchase. So the STR committee recommendations on this point are kind of moot. It's been 2 years. They were operating under a completely different paradigm, and there's no consensus among the members about how they remember the conversation. So I can't, with a straight face, present any authoritative STR committee recommendation. The mayor made 2 proposals back in June of 2022. There was a recommendation that ISTRs that existed when the ordinance passed could go to an eligible family member. And there was a definition of eligible family member, but the concept was that yes, ISTR licenses could be passed to eligible family members. And then again, in October of this year, so that June 2022 one addressed 6% properties. And then again, in October of this year, the mayor proposed an amendment for 4% properties. That if you were a 4% owner for 2 years and you suffered a qualifying event, these are just examples. This was never finalized or formalized into an exact amendment, but the concept was 4% owners who suffer some sort of qualifying event and and they lost their 6%, they lost their 4% status for whatever reason, the property became 6%, and their family members could get the property and get an ISTR. So those are the recommendations we have on the table to talk about inheritance. And again, it's the same set of caps in South Carolina, the same thing. Some do, some don't. There does not seem to be a unifying principle on this concept in the state or the country. And we're back to kind of our options. We can leave it as it is. The cap is in place. It's written the way it is. We can go forward. Or we can decide to allow family members, non-family members, whoever inherits the property to apply for an ISTR. Or we could also address it through that bridge license, for lack of a better term, saying to the family member, you inherited the property, we can't give you an ISTR right now. If you'd like one, take this bridge license and we'll get back to you, basically.
So again, I would say to have a complete conversation about either one of these, we need to come back on the 19th with the bridge license discussion in full. Because some folks might like one, the other, and then it could be combined or not combined or taken apart or whatever.
Yeah, there's nothing to compare right now.
Right.
Any other feedback? All right.
What we haven't talked about was the 19th, what time?
Yes. So we thought after tonight's meeting, we'd do a doodle poll like we did last time to find the time that worked for the most of you guys. And once we have that time, it's a tight turnaround, but we'll send the doodle poll to you. If you guys can respond by Friday afternoon, we should have a time and we should be able to advertise the meeting. I will say that time constraints, it would probably be Sunday or Monday morning before we could really flesh out and prepare a thorough explanation of a bridge license. And we'd have to go back and look at it kind of as it intersects with everything. So we can have a time and a date on Friday. I don't know if we can have a full packet on Friday. We can certainly try. But definitely within 24 hours of the meeting, we can have no problem. But
Could we just figure it out tonight, wouldn't have the special meeting?
It wasn't really on the agenda, so.
Well, I tell you, I got plans to leave on the 20th for the holidays, Christmas,
Well, this is the 19th.
the 19th of December.
Yeah.
The day before you plan to leave.
Right, so are we gonna have it?
Yeah.
Okay, what time?
That's what we just said. He's gonna send
Questions
out.
about,
Since it's a straight up work session, not a meeting after, can we go ahead and push the wait list onto that too? Because every email that we've gotten from smart people, stupid people, and middle people, everybody has said we need to get the wait list going first.
yeah, we'll put it on there and on one statement just about the wait
Yeah.
list. is
Those
up
two are
up
no
until
comment.
now, just to provide some insight on the context from staff's end. The wait list is important, but the things we've been talking about up until now aren't dependent on the wait list. We're not asking you guys to decide, should we approve this or not based on how long someone might be on a wait list, but whether or not they should have to be on the wait list, period. So that's why we had the wait list last, because these are meant to function independently as decisions. Should this person even be on the wait list versus, oh, well, maybe I wouldn't want to put them on the wait list if it's long, but if it's short, I will. We're more than happy to push that wait list discussion forward, but even at the next meeting, we will ask, before we go into details of how a wait list functions, we will ask City Council to provide some guidance on the basic structure of a wait list, because there doesn't appear to be consensus yet. We want a random wait list, a first come, first served wait list, a double line lottery wait list, a triple priority, two-tiered wait list. A lot of models have been running.
Even if that's all we do is talk about some parameters, everybody, and it wasn't a thing that we would do it as soon as possible. So even if we just discuss parameters, the citizens are asking us for that. I know staff's asking for it, but our people are beating us up about, we at least need to start that discussion. So between those two topics, that'll eat up a work session, and we should be able to get some good work done on both.
Sounds good.
Well, and most of the people that's confronting me about a wait list, they're worried about how many people's on the wait list. Potentially, everybody who don't have an ISTR license right this moment could be on the wait list.
But they keep asking, at least talk about it, so let's at least, and if we discuss it for 5 minutes, at least try to get something done on it to please the people that are asking for it. They want to put their name on something, let them put their name on it.
These decisions will make a huge impact on how many people are on the wait list. I mean, what we're doing now, so, last week we did,
That's what
yeah.
Aaron was talking about, you know, you create a wait list, but the number on the wait list is gonna be after you get through with the ordinance, however that
It's
comes
a
out.
chicken and egg problem, and there's benefits to addressing one before the other, and there are benefits to addressing the other before, it's chicken and
At
egg.
least get out there and let everybody know why we're waiting.
okay, so the good news is, on the 19th, we will have a meeting and have more information. And the question would be, is not extensive dialogue about a wait list, but if we can at least sort of project out and say, in January, I think that what's reasonable is to be able to have people know that not only are we gonna address it, but when.
And I think the most helpful thing for staff would be for council to debate and come to a consensus on the guiding principle of the wait list before we get into the structure of it.
Understand?
Random, first come, first serve, triple tiered, single tiered.
Draft lottery.
Yeah. Because once we know the preferred method, we can execute the process.
Understand.
So, somebody that would wanna be listing a home right now, I mean, what happens in the next 90 days could greatly affect
It could.
their listing price. I mean,
If you list it right now, you're gonna have to list it with what you got.
right.
Yeah, until a new ordinance is adopted, we will operate under the current ordinance, so
But maybe in the next 90 days, a new purchaser may be able to get this special
that.
bridge.
That would depend on council. Our goal is to finalize all of the amendments, changes for the February city council meeting, so they can be locked in place before the renewal season starts. That's our goal.
And maybe you want to go a little bit more into detail that the end game is February?
The middle of February. We need to have second reading, well, at least first in a special meeting if needed. But we need to have some sort of final answer on these prior to March 1st, because that's when renewals start. And we don't want this to be in flux when business license renewals start. Because then you've got folks who are gonna come in under one set of rules, and it would just blow up license renewals. And we've gotta have time to disseminate those decisions and educate the public and educate the owners and property managers. So that's our goal, to get it done around the middle of February, have everything locked down. And
Thank
other
you.
than Christmas and New Year's, we've basically planned out weekly meetings on this.
After New Year's, or before Christmas and after New
Right.
Year.
We'll meet next week and then we'll skip New Year's and Christmas, but then in January, we'll pick right back up
When do you think we'll pick back up in January?
on the 9th,
Okay,
which is the regular city council meeting. And
but not before then?
I don't think so.
We gotta have time off around Christmas.
9th, 16th, and 23rd.
Yeah, and if needed more, yeah, this is.
I think council's committed to showing up and working on this. It's important.
I agree.
Oh, when?
All right, so next steps, I'll get you guys polled. If you could turn that around as quickly as possible so we know, we can advertise the time and the date, and hopefully as much of a packet as possible on Friday, but absolute worst case, we'll get it out over the weekend so people have a few days to digest it before next Tuesday.
If you send the doodle poll out maybe now, so we have an hour break, you might get an answer before we leave.
Yeah, all right.
Because I'm looking at my calendar right now, and I'm, hey, pretty wide open. I would like to say if we can mix it up a little bit, if we can't keep doing 4 o'clock every one of these Tuesday work sessions, keep that in mind. Especially, come on, man, that's right in the middle. Ruined so
10 o'clock
much.
Tuesday morning?
I said 10 o'clock last time, and I thought that's what we were going with. That gives us, we can go all day if we need to.
I'm good with 10.
Are you good with 10?
Yes, sir.
Are you good with 10?
10 on
19th.
Tuesday the 19th? Yes, 10 a.m.
Billy? Yes.
All right.
10 o'clock.
Look at
How about
that.
that?
Hallelujah.
Perfect. All right, so 10 o'clock next Tuesday.
Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
Man, that was a good job, Tim.
Chop,
It ain't hard.
Biggest doodle poll's ever been done.
Yeah, it ain't hard. Well, I had us down for 10 o'clock, so y'all give me a break.
I
You
mean,
got a long time.
see, somebody who's gonna list their
Now I'm
house.
gonna go start work on next week's packet.
Yeah.